Good morning and welcome, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from today. My name is Ailsa Kepi, and I will be talking today on whether abusers, people that are emotionally or physically or sexually, financially abusive in relationships, whether they can change. This was brought up by somebody in our group who recently posted and kind of asked this question, and it comes up fairly often, I would say, in my work with women or anyone who's gone through abuse or trauma, is can this other person who's done this to me change? Because I love them, because I have feelings about them, because I want my marriage to work, I want my relationship to work. I know that there's something in this other person that is beautiful and worthy of love, right? So we really want them to change. So we're going to dive into that topic today because I think it's a really great topic to come around and discuss every once in a while. So if you're new to me, I have a Facebook group called Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure. So you might be catching me live there. You can also check me out on my Pleasure for Health YouTube channel. And you can look me up at ailsakepi.com. That will take you to my various different websites and ways of working with me. All right, so let's dive in today to this really juicy topic of will they change? And let's kind of look at a few really important points about this question. First of all, this question, where does this question come from? And we've all asked this question, anybody that's been in any kind of relationship, however mild to very severe abuse, to somebody who just acts like a numbskull every once in a while. We all ask this question, so I think we can resonate with the question. So I'm asking you, if you're watching this video, what part of you, like what are you actually asking here? Because many people are actually asking, am I worthy of this person to change for me? I want them to show me that I'm worthy of them becoming their best self for me. And that's what they're actually asking. So if you are really asking, are you willing to change for me? Am I worthy of you? You know, are you going to do some work for me? Are you going to fight for me? Fight your own demons for me? Because this is kind of falling into that way we've been brought up and conditioned as women, is that the mighty knight will fight the demons, be they outer demons or inner demons, and come to deserve and win the fair maiden, who then becomes who then they become the king and queen. And this is the myth that our culture has kind of put into us. And it's not a bad myth, but if we are waiting there as a fair maiden for this handsome knight to do his work so that he can carry us off to the castle, we're kind of, we're waiting for them to change. And so hence the question comes up, will he change for me? Am I his maiden? Am I the one he's willing to go on this mission for? And if not, why not? What's wrong with me? And then we go down that rabbit hole of what's wrong with me? Am I not good enough? Am I not worthy? Like, will he change for someone else? I get this question a lot too. If he doesn't change for me, is he going to change for someone else? Is it just because I'm not enough? I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not rich enough, like whatever it is. So the question in and of itself is an interesting question. Will he change? Now, if we are actually asking a question, will he change? Is there a potential for somebody who's abusive to change? Then of course the answer is there's a potential for anyone to change. However, it's unlikely that this person will change if being abusive is serving them in their immediate gratification. So if being abusive has got them to be a CEO of a company and everyone's kind of scampers around and does whatever they want, if being abusive has got them food and sex and loyalty, whether it's based on love or not, if it's gotten them what they need as far as in the immediate present time, there's not that much really there that's telling them in their life that they need to change, because hey, they're doing pretty good. So we need them to change because we're getting abused here in this relationship. But if they're not really finding anything wrong with the way things are, if you do everything and run around and scamper and walk on eggshells and make sure all the kids are, make sure everything's done and don't demand anything of them because they might get angry, well, that's probably serving them in some way. So if that is the case, there's not a whole lot to motivate an abuser to change. And I think this is the problem that many therapists find in working with people that have narcissistic tendencies or tend to, have even become like abusive. There's not a lot of things that they care about enough to change. So because, they're just feeling this themselves and, they're getting something filled potentially. Not, we know, those of us know that have been through stuff and really understand that there's a deeper sense of joy and peace in life by being a good person. If we've gotten to that place and we have sensed that there is a real underlying, I just call it like bliss about being alive and being a nice person, then they're probably, these abusers are not experiencing that, but they never have experienced that, most likely. So they don't know that that exists. So to expect them to kind of work towards this kind of unknown sense of joy and peace and being a nice person, how are they going to know what that is like if they've never thought about it or have had no experience of it? And, that could be many reasons. We can do another video about how somebody gets to the point where they've never thought about being a nice person as being a good feeling. That in and of itself is really sad, but we can leave that for a bit because I want to stay focused on our question, will they change? So first off, I would challenge anybody in the group or anybody watching this video to get really honest about what is the question you are asking. Will they change for me? Because I need them to change because I don't believe that I'm good enough in and of myself, and I want to see that by them changing for me. That will prove that I'm good enough, that I'm helpful enough, that I'm a good enough catch, that I'm whatever. So get really honest about that. And most of us have a bit of both, right? I'm not calling us all out that we're, completely lacking in self-esteem, although most of us that end up in abusive relationships are lacking in self-esteem. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the relationship, right? And I've been there for 18 years, so I get it. You have to find a different way to learn to value yourself than to rely on your abuser to change for you. So if that's what it's about, then the better question would be, how do I learn to value myself? And if I did value myself, would I still want to be with this person? And I would ask myself some really honest questions there. And if you feel like these questions are tough and you don't know how to even find them, that's exactly why you might work with someone like me to help you get really clear, to help you look at these questions, to help you understand how to find the answers for yourself. Once you find these answers, all of these other questions start being really easy to answer. Because once you value yourself, you're going to know if you should be with this person. You're going to know if you have the strength of will and character to make the right boundaries, to be a partner to someone who is maybe trying to change and has the potential to change. So, it takes a long time. It takes a long time for someone to change. If you've ever tried to change a habit for yourself or a belief system, it takes a long time. And we have these underlying belief systems that usually permeate and inform our entire reality. They take a long time to change. It requires a lot of work. So if somebody is telling you, they've done a weekend anger management course. Oh, I'm all cured now, I'm good. No, there is no way. There's no way they're cured. There's no way they've completely changed. They might have had an aha moment. They might have opened them up to what they want in life. They might even be on the path to change. Those could all be true, but they won't have solved the problem. And so it's like any addict, that has been through a change process. It's an every moment by moment, day by day process that you choose the right path every moment of every day for the rest of your life. And I can't stress that enough, that change takes time, it's hard, and it requires consistent work for the rest of your life, because you are changing who you are, and that doesn't happen like this, as much as we would love to think it does. So I wrote down a few other ways that we can look for change in people, and this is a list by Lundy Bancroft, and he wrote the books. The book title's gone out of me. Anyway, he's written some books about people that are abusers and why they do what they do. Why do they do that, I think, is one of his main books. Some of you may have read that. And he actually goes through, he worked with particularly men that were abusive for many years. And he wrote some books on this for the partners of these abusers, so that, we weren't all sitting there in our fairyland. Because I know for myself, I had a whole reality up here that if, my ex could just get on board with my reality, everything would be great. But he, of course, wasn't in my reality. He had his own reality. And so we have to actually be willing to look at their reality and get really clear about, where do our realities come together? Do they come together at all? Am I being idealistic? Am I being unrealistic? Am I in my own dream world up here? And if so, let's get really real about what's happening. So, this is a big part of my work with people is getting to the point of what is real here? What is true? What can we really base our going forward on? So some of the things that would be required for someone to change. And I read through this list, I just have to tell you before, and I was like, if someone does all these things, they're going to be a phenomenal person. So I would just say that if anybody actually has someone that goes through and really works on themselves, you probably have an amazing partner there. So I'll just put that out there. It's also something that would be worth looking at for ourselves to say, do I do any of these things? Because I think anybody would benefit from this list. So admitting fully what they have done would be the first thing. Can they admit what they've done? Can they see it? Can they admit it? Can they say it? Can they feel it? And so that's a big first step. And, I know someone recently who's, found out her boyfriend has some addiction to pornography and escorts and different things, which is, a way of sneaking around, kind of an addiction. And it came up, she found out little snippets of what was going on, and she would ask him, is there anything else? Is there anything else that you want to tell me about what's going on? Like, you've said you're going to tell me everything. Is there anything else? And she would make this statement, and he would say no. And a week later, she would find out something else, and she would say, but you told me there was nothing else. And here is another thing. And then he would, they'd go through this long process, and he would get to the point of, yes, I did this other thing. And then she'd say, well, is there anything else? And he would say, no, there's nothing else. Here's all my passwords, here's all the things. And then a week later or so, there would be something else, So if somebody is in that much denial and they can't actually admit what they're doing or what they've done, then there's nowhere to start. Like, you haven't gotten to first base yet. You're not even at the batting, you're not there. So if somebody hasn't admitted what they're doing, if they think they're not abusing you, if they think that it's not abuse because their friend does it, and, while all the guys down the club do this, no, they're not even there yet. So there's no way that someone can change if they don't even know where they're starting from. So that's probably the number one. And along with that, they have to stop making excuses and blaming other people. And this is really hard for all of us because, you know, I still have a hard time with this. I'll just be completely open. Like if someone says to me, you know, I was hurt by that email you sent out, like it, you know, it kind of hurt my feelings. It's really easy to say, oh, I'm sorry you were hurt, but you know, I was really rushed that day, or I'm sorry you were hurt, but you know, I was just trying to respond. But you see the but there? I'm sorry, but that's not an I'm sorry. That's not, you know, saying I'm sorry in any kind of way. That's making excuses, finding something else to blame. I was too busy. I was answering someone else. I did, you know, X, da, 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 da. So it takes a lot of emotional growing to get to that place of not blaming and not making excuses. So there's something else to look for. I did this thing. I'm sorry it hurt you. End of story. End of sentence, right? No buts, no whatever. No something else was going on. No, but you were doing this. No, nothing. Just I hear what happened, how that felt for you. And then they have to want to make amends. You know, they have to want to change and make amends. And making amends looks different for every relationship, looks different for every person. And it's something you might think about if you were on the other side of this. So if you're feeling like you're being abused and someone is potentially open to changing, what would make amends for you? What would that be? Because this is a difficult question. In the case of the woman that kept finding out about her boyfriend, like, you know, she wanted all his passwords. She wanted to check all his emails. She wanted him to leave his email open on the shared computer. She wanted to talk to him every day on the phone, like if he was away, whatever. So there were a number of things she wanted. But even with all of those, there was still doubt all the time. So, you know, what would make amends for you if he was to, pay you $100 every time he F's up, or stops obviously you want him to change his behavior and stop contacting all those people, or stop abusing you, stop calling you names, whatever that is. But how does he make amends for what he's done? What would you accept as a making amends gesture? That's something each of us has to consider for ourselves. You know, is it that he comes home every evening and makes dinner for you? Is it that, you know, every time he yells at you, you know, like what? And it has to be something that he really wants to work with, right? So making amends is a big one. So you know, we've kind of talked about accepting responsibility, recognizing that abuse is a choice. If he ever says, or I shouldn't always say he, but if the abuser says, you know, well, you know, I yelled at you because you yelled at me. I got angry. I threw the vase because you made me so angry because you didn't do my laundry right, or whatever. I mean, those are kind of ridiculous examples, but you want to, you know, recognize that abuse is a choice. You know, when something happens in life, you have a choice about how you respond to that. And for people that have, you know, addictions or anger management things, like, they have to realize that they have a choice about that. It's not just that the rage overtakes them and then they can't do anything about it and you were in the way and so they hit you. No, they have a choice, and it might be a fleeting moment of a choice before the anger gets too much for them to pull back, but they do have a choice about that, and they have to realize they have a choice. Because if they feel powerless with their own you know, abusive tendencies, then they're not going to be able to change, because they're just always going to say, I'm powerless, right? So they have to own their own power. They have to identify patterns of controlling behavior that they use. So they have to be able to see that, okay, every time I, you know, feel threatened and I start calling her names or putting her down, that's me feeling vulnerable. They have to start recognizing these patterns. You can see where you know, them being willing to do therapy might be a big part of this change, right? Because not many people are going to do these things on their own. It's just, it's hard to do. So you can see where someone getting therapy and having a really good therapist who builds up rapport with them but doesn't let them get away with stuff, and then can actually start interjecting like, hey, this seems like a pattern for you that you do when you feel threatened, and that they can start hearing that. So they actually have to identify also the attitudes that are underlying their abusive patterns, which could be that their mother, when they were little, their mother was always passive and never stood up to anyone and never did anything. And therefore they're like, women don't have any power, women suck, or whatever it is. If they have an underlying belief that that's true, it's going to be very difficult for them to build respect and love and a good relationship with a woman. Like, it's just going to be difficult. So you have to look at the attitudes underlying these patterns. And that can take a while. That can take a while for someone to really get to that. And then accepting that this process, like I said at the beginning, takes decades. It takes years, it takes decades, it's ongoing. You know, if you've ever talked to someone who has dealt with alcoholism or any of these things, sex addiction, it's like something it's an entire life process that you're going to be working with this. So again, I have to ask you, you know, is he going to change? Here's a question that you probably need to really come to terms with. Let's say he does start the change process. If you decide to stay with this person, you are in it for the long haul. It's going to be an entire lifetime of supporting and being there and being a partner with this person who could be on the changing path for their entire lives. Sometimes they'll go quickly, sometimes it'll slow down. You know, this is a long-term process. This is not, are you going to change by next weekend? Because we're supposed to get married in a month. No. It doesn't happen like that. This is about a long process. So you have to kind of be willing to take that in as well. So there's a couple of things about that. And then not demanding credit for the improvements they've made. So this is interesting, right? Sometimes people have this idea that if I make improvements now, I'm like a really cool guy and you have to stay with me now because look at all the things I've done for you. Do you see how that's kind of manipulating still? And now it's like, well, I gave up my friends. I don't go out anymore. I don't shout. I've done all these anger management therapy classes. And now you still say, you know, now it's you're stuck with me, you know, like that's kind of their idea, is that now you owe me something because I've changed. No, you don't owe them anything. You don't owe them anything. So you can stay with them, not stay with them. This process needs to be about them. And then, you know, they have to not decide that they're suddenly cured and it's all good. So we've talked about that. The other way that he put it was not treating improvements as vouchers to be spent on occasional acts of abuse. So you don't want this person to say, well, I've been good all month and I blew up at you one time. Like, are you going to hold that against me? Like, look how good I've done for a month. Well, great. You've done great for a month, but that doesn't mean that you get to spend that month on being mean to me for a day, you know, here and there. Like, I don't want this like voucher system. You know, you have to be trying all the time. Now, will they slide back every now and then? Absolutely. If someone is really trying to change, we all probably know that we're going to slip up now and then. But you want them to, again, go back, take full responsibility, to really hear what the impact of that was, to fully commit to the process, not to say, oh, but I did this so good for a month and you're blaming me for one time. And so here's an interesting thing. They actually have to start developing respectful and kind, supportive behaviors. So of course, if they've always acted in a particular way to get what they want, or, you know, in life, they actually have to learn new ways of doing that. And that can be challenging as well. And how they respond to your partner, you know, to your anger, to your grievances, to things that, you know, to a discussion, to financial issues, to stress. I mean, we all probably know that these types of behaviors come back when there's stress involved, right? It might be all smooth sailing for a while, and then let's say they lose their job or something happens to one of your kids or whatever, and the stress comes up again, and all of a sudden the abuse comes back, because that's the way they deal with the stress. So they have to accept that their actions have consequences, and they need to be willing to work on all of those things. Now, that's a lot of things. If you think about someone working on all of that, we should all be working on all of that. Abusers have to get on board with doing all of that for themselves, not for you. They might get on board for their kids. That might be something that they actually want to work for. That's the most common reason why an abuser will change, is that they see what it's doing to their kids, and somehow their kids, they can understand as an extension of them, and they feel something about their children. So that is probably the most likely reason that an abuser would actually try to change. Unfortunately, not usually for you, not usually for the partner. So you just have to own that that is the way it is. You know, you are not the important thing that's going to help them change. You might be able to support that. If you are going to stay with someone that is going through this process, you are also going to have to change. So therein lies an interesting thing to reckon with too. If you and your abusive partner have been together, there's going to be a level of codependency there. There's going to be a level of you fit each other in a certain way. So you are going to have to change. If they're actually changing, you're going to have to change too. And that might mean developing boundaries. That might mean developing your own self-esteem system. That might mean developing your own interests. That might mean a lot of like anger management, stress management on your part. That might mean developing new behaviors on your part as well. So relationships one person doesn't change in a relationship and it's fixed. Both people have to change. So this is a path for both of you to commit to. And you might have more of a commitment, because if you're getting abused, it hurts you. You're getting hurt, so you want the change. If your abuser is not getting hurt and they don't realize they're hurting, and they're not taking on that they're hurting others, then it's often difficult to get there. So, I hope that's kind of given you an idea of the ways that we could sort of look at whether someone's serious about making changes, and the kind of changes that we need to make in our own way of being in order to work with someone like that. And we are never going to be able to be their therapist. They're going to need to have their own therapy. We're going to need our own therapy. I don't think couples therapy works in these situations. It just usually perpetuates the abuse or backtracks a lot. So I'm kind of not a proponent of couples therapy at this juncture of like an abusive relationship. Couples therapy works great if you're just have different communication styles or whatever, definitely there's a time and place for it. But in these types of relationships, you both need to do your own work. And if that can work together and you can stay together, maybe that becomes like, you can imagine if somebody did do all these things, they might be quite an amazing partner. But we have to be realistic about the time it takes and the effort it takes. And I do know many people who just don't have the courage, don't have the stamina, don't have the whatever to make the change. They just don't have it. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to change. I work with women, even on the other side, right? It takes a lot for us to change. It's a lot of courage. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of looking reality in the face. It's not easy. So, first of all, ask yourself, are you willing to change? And potentially that means that you're willing to walk away from this relationship. Maybe that's the catalyst for this other person to change. And maybe you're willing to walk away and maybe they do the change, but it's not for you. Maybe they do it for the next person down the road. And that doesn't mean you weren't worthy. That means you served your divine purpose and intention in this world for that person. I don't know. Doesn't matter actually, because it's not about us trying to change anyone else. It's about our journey in this world by ourselves. And if we happen to have amazing relationships or abusive relationships or any relationships, these are opportunities for growth. These are opportunities to experience divine love, maybe, or realize, like, work through our own version of what is love, what is partnership, what is intimacy. There's many reasons why relationships are really awesome. To have support, we are kind of a species that we don't do well in isolation. So for all those reasons, we need to work with relationships. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's you facing your reckoning, and it's about you. So those are some of my thoughts about the question, will they change? There's no easy answers there. There's unfortunately not a magic pill about that, but I hope that's given you some food for thought. And please do comment and comment on the video. Put your stories in the Facebook group. We would love to hear, where you're at, what you're grappling with in your relationships or after your, abuse, and feel the support of the group. We can support each other to move forward. And it's been a pleasure talking to you all today. And I look forward to our next time together. And please do, share the group with your friends if you feel they would be helpful. Share the video if you're watching this later on YouTube, and you can share it. That would be awesome. And thank you so much. All right.